Oh hi, my name is Eze and I'm a speech and debate trainer. I'm going to talk today about books. I think a lot of people find books boring, and by a lot of people are me, and there are a lot of people, right, who think that books are supposed to be read by only students who have an exam to pass, or a thing that you do when you are literally bored out of your mind. However, there are a lot of interesting things about reading books or interesting facts, and I'm going to talk to you about that in this video. But before I get into that, why do we read books? Essentially, I think that books give us value, and those values make us an asset. See, we live in a hyper-capitalistic world where your ability to climb up your ladder, whatever it is, your corporate ladder, any sort of ability for you to actually make enhancements in this world requires an exchange of value for you to get those dollar bills that you are chasing. And that sort of value that you have to offer is usually embedded in a lot of books. The funniest thing I see a lot of graduating students do around me is when they are finishing school, they say, once I'm done with this exam, I'm never going to read even a signpost anymore, an ad on a newspaper or anything. It's very hilarious. But if you've been fed that school of thought that reading is something that is exclusively reserved for students, I think it is time for you to unlearn that. There are a number of reasons. Firstly, you've probably heard that knowledge is power, and this is like a cliche statement that we're all raised with. But the most important thing to note is that power comes as a result of the residual value that the knowledge you get from books, or any other source actually gives you or places in you. And the most important thing also to note here is that the knowledge that becomes power has very little to do with the knowledge that you learned in your physics textbooks or your mathematics textbooks. And I'm not saying those things are not important, but I'm saying that when you leave school, when you get out of school, that is the time when you want to acquire as much value as possible, to have as much power to engage in the real world. So yes, while you must have needed to do all of that reading in your school to get it great, now you need to actually do the reading to stay relevant in the real world that you find yourself in. My first favorite argument about reading books is that they're the cheapest way to gain value. Now think of all the thousands of US dollars that you paid in high school or in university trying to learn one specific sort of information, maybe being a biotechnology expert or being a fine artist or whatever it is. And think of the price of books that also offer that sort of knowledge. It means ultimately that because you live in a world where it is very incredibly difficult actually to be one kind of individual, to be single faceted, to be single eye viewed and know only one thing. So if you have a background in finance, you can't really walk through the entire life just being an individual who knows stuff about finance and nothing more. What it means is that you need to have a little bit of knowledge about these other issues around you or some other disciplines. How do you do that? Of course, you don't want to go back to Harvard and probably learn about political administration before you know about that. You do all of these things by reading, and I think that this is the cheapest way for you to actually get the sort of experiences that being in school actually gives you. Number two, reading helps you be a better person in networking sessions. Now I know that a lot of people like the idea of networking to make friends and expand their social circle. But do you realize that the only way you are able to actually be an efficient individual who attracts people to yourself is if you come off as knowledgeable, if you come off as an individual who has some sort of value to offer in these conversations. Reading is the one way for you to easily sound smart, because you're not exactly sure the girl you're going to meet at that party on Friday is likely going to be someone who is into the Harry Potter series, right? You want to either read or at least have the information about that background so that you have this sort of standing to have that sort of conversation with them. Also, I think that reading actually allows us to bypass our own experiences. Now, I grew up in a setting where a lot of people say experience is the best teacher, but nobody really says that has to be your experience, right? So experience could be the best teacher, but what books do for you is that they allow you to leverage on the experiences of other people. Because the truth is, experience is such a brutal teacher. Experience doesn't teach you like your law professor is going to teach you in school. It teaches you by actually putting you through the ground, and beating you all up, and you have to dust yourself up. But why do you need to learn, or how do you have a rough experience about business or finance or politics for you to actually learn about those things, when there are books already written by people who have been beaten down by experiences in those areas or fields of study that you can actually just learn from? So yeah, I do agree that totally experience is the best teacher. It doesn't have to be your experience. I think what books do for you is that they offer you an insight into other people's experiences. Are you also aware that reading helps improve your mental health? Now I know that there's a lot of disputed research on the internet about whether or not reading actually improves people's IQ, but what is actually true is that it gives you a very good sense of reasoning. And this is incredibly important in allowing you escape from the exigencies of the real world that you find yourself in. Whatever kind of books you want to read, if you're somebody who loves fantasies and likes to run away into the land of fiction, that is also perfectly good, because it allows you the ability to be in this real world and experience an entirely different world. People who read will tell you that is probably the most exciting thing about reading these books. Essentially, and this is a bonus point, because I told you in the beginning that I'm also the kind of person who would have said reading doesn't really it's a boring activity or doesn't really improve you. So if you have problem staying up or keeping your attention span long enough for you to finish an entire book, what you could do is to find alternative ways to get that information. Because truth is, as exciting as reading books are, the most important thing out of these books are the value that are embedded in them. So a couple of ideas for you. You could actually tune into audiobooks. There are a lot of websites that offer audiobooks. Even right here on YouTube, you could see audiobooks that have been transcribed for free. I talked about AIs in my last video. You could actually also find apps that directly convert even your academic reading into audiobooks that are very easy for you to listen to. Now I can't advertise any AI apps right here, but I'm sure you can also find those for yourself. Very importantly, and this is a cheat code, I feel bad for having to share this, but also what I do sometimes when I want to learn about a concept that I find incredibly boring or difficult to put my eyes in a book and read, is that I have conversations with people who have actually read those things, right? So you might have done it as a student. You have problem, learning about beams and structures or trusses and whatever else you did in engineering school. But ultimately, you could actually discuss with people who already know special things about this, and just that conversation rubs off on you and helps you, sound knowledgeable in that presentation or interview or wherever it is. So the point is, you could also have a lot of conversations with people who read. Somehow, I want to believe that people can actually learn stuff just by hanging around other people who have learned those stuff. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you, and if you've been watching this video up until this point, remember that the most important thing is that you live in a world that exchanges value for value. The less value you have, the easily replaceable you are. Like I discussed in my previous video, I don't think it is AIs that are going to take away your jobs, right? I think it is your inability to adjust to a new world where you need to up your value, to be able to be relevant. If this video has been valuable to you, I think you should be also valuable to us by subscribing to this channel and also by sharing this video. Thank you for being here. My name is Eze Makuba, and I'll see you next time.